Started. Let me resume the recording. Okay. So yesterday we started with the introductory part of what exactly is Selenium. We have seen that there is no license required to work on Selenium, and Selenium is not a tool that we can install on our desktop. So it's just a collection of library. It's a jar file. Jar file basically, when we are using Selenium with Java, then it is available in a form of a jar file. If we use Selenium with C#, it is available in a form of a DLL file. If we use it with Ruby, then it is available in a form of a gem file. With Python, there is a pip library available. Same way for JavaScript, there is an npm package available. For PHP, there is another bindings available. For every language, Selenium is available. So whichever language that you are comfortable with, you can download Selenium dependency. We call it as a dependency as well. So you can download the Selenium dependency with that particular language, and then you can automate any website that you want using Selenium. So Selenium is only for web-based automation testing, not for desktop, mobile, API, or database. But all these things can be easily integrated with the framework in which we are using Selenium. Because for all these things, like there are jars available. Shweta is saying that I'm not audible. I guess for everyone else, I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for confirming. All right. So before we get started, do you have any questions, any queries from yesterday's session? Anything that you want to discuss? You want to ask? Anyone? Any question?
Yeah, I have one question.
Yeah, Vishali.
Yesterday, the program about the calculator we have done. Why we create why we write the code for constructor? Like I didn't get that point. No? Why we call the method creating an object, but like you created one constructor for the same. No, why we created that?
So at times we need to create a by default functionality. Let's say before we call any functionality from the web page, we want some action to be performed. Let's say I took example of this constructor because you remember when we added the Selenium jar file. So we created an object of Chrome driver class.
Right.
So very first method is in Chrome, when you launch Chrome, is for navigation. But there is no method for launching a browser. So launching a browser take place inside the constructor itself. So whosoever developer has created this class has created a constructor, and inside that written a code for launching the browser. So that is the reason, I mean, this was the concept. That's the reason why I explained what constructor is and why we need to use constructor and how we're going to call the constructor. It is automatically called as soon as we create an object of a class. So we need not to explicitly call it.
Okay, fine.
Right. Otherwise, in core Java, there is a complete lecture on constructor. So argumented constructor, default constructor, all these things you'll be learning once you reach to the core Java part.
Like when we have to call any object, when we have to call any object from another class or from the same class, so we always have to like create a constructor before
even if the constructor is not there, there is a default constructor that is always called. So you are not explicitly calling it.
Like we have created yesterday, no? So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah. It depends on the requirement.
Okay.
Right, I explain it just because of this scenario.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, any more questions? So before we get started with today's topic, first of all, we should be understanding about these versions of Selenium. So we need to be familiar with the history of Selenium. History as well as the architecture of Selenium before we actually starting with the coding part or the programming part or starting learning Selenium. So we should be familiar with the brief history of Selenium. So Selenium first version was started at ThoughtWorks. This we have discussed yesterday as well. So in 2004 by a developer named as Jason Huggins. So if we talk about the base architecture of Selenium, the core library of Selenium, since it was a development project itself, right? The core library was JavaScript based. JavaScript based, as in, if I talk about JavaScript, not as a language, in general terms about JavaScript, any one of you familiar with what exactly JavaScript is, where it runs? Can anyone tell me where JavaScript runs?
Yeah, it runs on the browser.
On website, it runs basically for some scripting languages. For website, we need some JS files, each and network logs.
So where exactly it runs?
Server.
Client side.
On the client side, not on the server side. It runs on the client side. Client side as in the UI part. So if, let's say, I'm on any website, if I want to perform any action on this website, it could be any action, clicking on a button, typing over here, changing the font on the runtime, doing any changes on the UI, I can easily do with the help of JavaScript. And that is what they have implemented in the very first version of Selenium, that how Selenium runs. See, when the very first version came into the market, the components that were there in the first version were IDE, and there is a component called as RC, which we also call it as a remote control, and then there was grid 1. So these were the three major components at the time of Selenium 1.0 when Selenium launched in the market. IDE, we have already seen, it's just a record and play plugin, record and play. And at that point of time as well, this plugin was only available for a browser called as Firefox. Now we have seen that not much can be achieved using record and play. So we need some coding library. So coding library at that point of time, they have created with this RC library, the remote control library. This was the coding library. So what they did initially, they created one major class called as default Selenium. So this was the only class at that point of time, only major class. And this class contains all the functionalities that you can call and you can automate a website. So functionality, like there was a function, a method called as start. If you call this method, this will launch your browser. After launching a browser, you need to do navigation, navigating to a website. So there's the method called as open. And inside this, there's a code written. If you call this open method, you can navigate to a website. After navigating to a website, you want to get the title of that page. So there is a method called as get title. You want to perform click on a button. There's a method called as click. You want to type your username and the password in the input field. There's a method called as type. So that is how they have designed the very first library. Although it was a Java project, so these are the collection of methods that they have created. And inside this, they have written a code. If you call start, it will launch a browser. If you call click, it will click on a button or a link, whichever that you are going to provide, right? So there's a question, you mean to say that Selenium people developed this library in JS? That is what I'm trying to explain you. This library was not designed in JS. This library was designed in Java itself. But the internal architecture that they have used was implemented in JavaScript. So how that was implemented in JavaScript, that is what we are going to understand. Now, as an end user, we are calling these methods only. These basic core Java methods only. And how are we going to call these methods? There is a class, there are methods. How to call a method from a class? By creating an object of a class. So this is how we create an object. Default Selenium, Selenium equal to new default Selenium. And in order to call a method, I simply need to say selenium.start. So if I run this much code, it is going to launch a browser. After launching a browser, I want to do navigation. So I'll say selenium.open and I'm going to pass on the URL, let's say http google.com. And after navigating, I'll be saying I want to get the title of the page. So I'll say selenium.get title. I want to click on a button. I'll say selenium.click. I want to type in an input box. I'll say selenium.type. I want to close the browser. I'll say selenium.close. So that is how calling one by one method and automating a website. And for this code, you don't need very much understanding of a programming. It was very simple. If you just go through this library, start calling methods one by one, you can automate 70% of the website without even knowing a very good core Java programming. Just for adding logics, basic if else loops were required. Otherwise, this library was very simple to work with. But if I call the method click, what it does, it performs, let's say, click on this button. If I call the method type, what it does, it performs typing over here. Now, this is a plain core Java code. How this code is communicating with the browser? How this code is performing action on this browser? So what is written behind the architecture? So that is what it was written with the help of JavaScript injection. When you run this code, there's a JavaScript that is injected on your browser to perform action on these elements. So basically, let's say if I'm a JavaScript developer, I don't even need to use Selenium. I can write some JavaScript code and I can perform click, I can perform type, I can perform any action on this UI because JavaScript runs on the UI part. So any action I need to automate, I need to handle, I can easily do it with JavaScript. But JavaScript is a little tricky as compared to basic core Java. So in case I want to perform click on this button, there's a code something like this, document dot get element by ID dot click, something like this. Very similar to what JavaScript is. Now, what they did, they have wrapped this code inside the click method. So as an end user, you are calling this click, but what is happening internally is a JavaScript that is being injected onto your website and the action is performed. And in order to inject this JavaScript, there is something which is called a Selenium standalone server. This you need to start. So this was a prerequisite. You need to start a server. You need to start a service that will help in injecting the JavaScript. Then only when you run the code, the automation process will happen. Otherwise, if the server is not started, the JavaScript will not be injected and you'll not be able to execute the Selenium code. And this server is nothing. This server is the same jar file that you see on the Selenium website over here. If you go to selenium.dev, yesterday what we did, we downloaded Selenium from here. Is it started manually? Yes, we need to start it manually. We can start it programmatically as well. They have later on in the API provided some method to start it programmatically as well. But mostly you need to download this jar file. So yesterday we downloaded this like this. Initially it was Selenium 1.0 version. And then in order to start it, we need to go to command prompt and we need to say java-jar Selenium server this .jar file and press enter. And then this services are started. So right now it is not going to start because this is 4.0. So this will not going to start it in this way. So when you will be using Selenium grid, then you need to start it something like this by saying standalone. So what Selenium grid is, we'll be discussing about it very soon. So still we need to start it like this. Right now there is some issue. Maybe I'm not using 4.0. I need to use 4.3. But this is how, I mean, it is saying no driver found. Now what this driver is, I've not provided any driver. So what this driver is, we'll be talking about this process as well. But this is the process of starting the services, Selenium standalone server, before we execute any code in Selenium 1.0. We need to start the server. Why we need to start the server? Because the server will help in injecting the JavaScript. As an end user, we don't know what is happening behind the architecture. This is just for your knowledge. As an end user, you'll just be writing this code, you'll be starting the server, and you'll be automating your website. Right? As a tester, will be doing that stuff. But if someone asks you what is behind the architecture of Selenium 1, Selenium 2, Selenium 3, or Selenium 4, then you should be aware of the architecture of Selenium and the brief history of Selenium. right? Do we need to start it every time while programming? Right now, we no need to start it. This was at the time of Selenium 1. But at the time of Selenium 1, yes, this was a prerequisite. We need to start the server either programmatically or manually, right? So if I show you the architecture, this is what the architecture of Selenium 1 when it was started in 2004. So this was a Selenium core which sits inside your browser itself. So this is your application under test in IE, in Firefox, in Safari, in different browsers. And whichever browser supports the JavaScript injection, only in that browser you can run your code. So you can see this is the remote control server. And this is your client. Client as in, this is your client, the code that you have written, your Eclipse. So when you run the code from here, the request is sent with the help of this server. And this will further inject JavaScript on your browser and perform action on your browser. So this was the architecture of Selenium 1.0. But there were a lot of challenges in this architecture that people have faced, that companies have faced while using Selenium 1.0. So what were the challenges? One of the major challenge was this library itself. As this was the only major class available which contains all the functionalities that you can call and automate a website. So if we talk about this particular class, there were limited amount of methods available. Means in this class can have 100 methods, 200 methods, not more than that. So it means our automation is limited to these 200 methods only. If a method is there, you can perform action on the website. You can automate that particular test case. If a method is not there, then you cannot automate it. Otherwise, you may need to create a functionality of your own. But you are working as a tester. You're not working as a developer. You're not going to develop Selenium, right? So this was a very limited library. Like if I talk about, there are many scenarios, let's say from this page, I want to find how many total links are there on the page. I want to validate each link. That is my test case. There was no as such method in the library which will help you in getting all the links printed from the website. So this is one of the 1,000 scenarios. There was many as such scenarios where the methods, the functionality was not available due to a limited library. So this was one of the biggest challenge. The other challenge was this JavaScript injection itself. There were many browsers, like IE was a highly secured browser. IE was one of the major browsers that was used in 2004. Now, nowadays, you may not see anyone using IE, right? Nowadays, people are using Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Safari. But at that point of time in 2004, one of the majorly used browser was IE. And IE used to be a highly secured browser. And IE don't allow JavaScript injection on its browser. This is because due to the security reason. If I talk about JavaScript, I just discussed where JavaScript runs, it runs on the client end. So if I am a JavaScript developer, I can write such a code that can fetch information out of your browser. It could be stored cookies, it could be stored credit card information, your user credentials. I can easily write a JavaScript code. If you navigate to my website, it will inject JavaScript on your browser and it can fetch all these informations. So IE, being a secured browser, it blocks that JavaScript injection. So when we used to run our Selenium RC code on IE, we get a blocker that script cannot be executed further due to the reason the JavaScript is blocked. But there were alternates. Alternates is go to IE settings and remove all the security modes, remove all the security from your browser. Then you should be able to run your Selenium script and you should be able to automate it on IE as well. But if you remove all the security, the websites that are accessed through HTTPS, the website that has got SSL certificates, you'll not be able to open those websites. You'll start getting some errors like this. When you remove security from IE, you'll start getting some errors like this. The site security certificate is not trusted, invalid server certificate. A lot of these errors happened at the time of Selenium RC. So this is what, I mean, the injection process happened due to the JavaScript only, right? This was written in the architecture of RC, Selenium 1.0. So this was the biggest challenge. Majorly supported browser was Firefox. Firefox allows this injection, but there was some project that was developed specific to IE only. So I'm not sure, I mean, if someone of you are still working on IE, because there are some old client applications that still runs only and only on IE. They don't support Chrome, they don't support Firefox, they still run on IE. So at that point of time, there were many applications that were developed specific to IE only. Yeah, IE is officially gone now. So now we have Edge, Chromium browsers. Now IE is no more there. So don't need to worry about it. I was talking about a time 2004 when Selenium 1 came into the market. So these were the challenges. JavaScript injection, limited library. These were the challenges that were faced by companies at the time using Selenium 1.0. And all these challenges were recognized by a person whose name is Simon Stewart. So he's the guy who started another project parallel to Selenium RC, which is called as WebDriver. And he used to work as a lead developer with Google, where he started this project WebDriver. And Google developers contributed majorly in the development of WebDriver. Not only Google, there were many developers from big organizations, from Adobe, from Facebook, from ThoughtWorks, from Google, have contributed into the development of WebDriver. So initially, WebDriver was started at Google. What all challenges that were faced in Selenium RC, the first version of Selenium, were overcome in WebDriver. So Simon Stewart has seen all these challenges, and he has overcome these challenges in WebDriver and created such a powerful library where he removes the JavaScript injection. So in the architecture, there was no JavaScript injection. Selenium RC library was very limited. The library which was created in WebDriver was quite huge with so many classes. In case you want to see the WebDriver library, you can see it from here. So you go to selenium.dev, go to downloads, and go down. You'll see all the language bindings that are supported by Selenium. You go to this API document. Since we are starting with Java, click on frames, and you can see a huge collection of classes. So all these classes are there in your WebDriver project. But you need not to worry about it. All these classes are already implemented. You just need to call these classes, call the methods from these classes, and automate your website. Like if we talk about in RC, there was one major class called as default Selenium. If we talk about WebDriver, for every browser, they have created a website, created a class. For example, if I talk about Chrome, there's a class called as Chrome Driver. If you talk about Firefox, a class called as Firefox Driver. If you want to automate stuff on IE, there's a class called as Internet Explorer Driver. To support Safari, Safari Driver, Opera Driver. Not only this, huge collection of classes, each to support every feasible functionality around the web. You're going to find a class over here. And still, if there is a test case where you don't find a method inside this library, you can easily integrate another Java API with this library to support the automation of that functionality very easily. Right? So you can see there's a class Firefox Driver. If you want to work with Firefox, there's a class called as Firefox Driver. If you want to automate on Chrome, we have used a class called as Chrome Driver. So that is what they did. They created a huge collection of library. They've removed JavaScript injection from the library. And later on, when this project was ready, they've merged this project with Selenium, and we call it as Selenium 2.0 or Selenium WebDriver. And the components of Selenium 2 were IDE, RC, WebDriver, and Grid 2. So this release started from 2.0 and has gone up till version 2.53.1, in which there were many companies working with RC first, right? All of a sudden they launched a WebDriver, and now they are saying that stop using RC, stop using Selenium 1 and move to Selenium 2.0. But there were many projects that were automated using Selenium RC as well. So what they did after the merger of Selenium and WebDriver, they have still kept RC alive. So they're saying that if you are using RC as well, stop using it with Selenium 1.0 because we have the same library support with Selenium 2.0 as well. So start using 2.0, start adopting the features of WebDriver. If your project still supports RC, you can still use it with Selenium 2.0. But in 2.44 release, they have deprecated RC. Deprecation means you can still use it, but if there is any issues, further development will not happen in RC. We are not going to fix any bugs. We are not going to support any feature of RC. So it's better that you should move to WebDriver. And then in Selenium 3, RC was gone, only IDE, WebDriver, and Grid 3 is there. And same way, if we talk about Selenium 4, we have IDE, we have WebDriver, we have Grid. Grid 4, you can call it as. So what is the difference in the architecture of Selenium 2, Selenium 3, or Selenium 4, and how the communication takes place? You remember we have executed this code yesterday, and I have not started any server because server was only required for JavaScript injection, which was a part of Selenium 1. In Selenium 2, there is no more JavaScript injection, so there is no need to run this server in Selenium 2, even in Selenium 3, even in Selenium 4. After Selenium 1.0, no need to run the server. You can directly write the code, you run it, and it will start communicating with your browser and will going to perform action on your browser. But this is again a simple Java class. How it is communicating with my browser? As an automation test engineer, I need not to worry about how the communication is taking place because that is a backend process. But for the interview point of view, for knowing what exactly Selenium is, you guys must be familiar with the architecture of Selenium, how this communication is taking place, right? So what they did after 1.0, they removed the JavaScript injection, but how these classes are communicating with your browser, let us see this right now. So if I go down, you'll see that Selenium 2, this release went up till 2.53.1. This was launched on 14th July 2011. Officially, it was released in 2011 July itself, right? And how the communication happens, the native support initially was given to Firefox. So there was a direct communication with the Firefox. Your Selenium WebDriver, it directly communicates with the DOM component of Firefox. Now, what is DOM component? DOM component is the HTML part. So Selenium interacts with the HTML elements, right? So HTML elements, as in if you open up Firefox, so I'll be using a lot of DOM when we are studying Selenium. So what exactly this DOM is, let me show it to you. So if you want to see the HTML part of your website, there is one way you can right click here and say view page source. But this is a lot of HTML code. You may not able to see your elements like this over here. So the best thing is right click on your element, click on inspect, and then you should be able to see your element HTML code over here. So this is your DOM component, right? Let me increase the font size. So this is your DOM component. So Selenium 2.0 has a direct support, native support with your Firefox browsers. So you can directly run, and it is going to communicate with your Firefox browser with the Firefox native support, and you can execute the code easily. But this was not there with other browsers. So other browsers, there is something called as JSON wire protocol that was implemented. Now, if I talk about a browser, let's say if I talk about a browser, I want to execute things on Chrome. So what I'll be using Chrome driver class. I'll be creating an object of this class. So when I run this, a browser will launch and all the action will be performed on Chrome. But how the communication is taking place, there is no direct communication with your Chrome browser. So Chrome browser, they provide their own API, which is developed by the Chrome developer itself. So who is Chrome developer? Where Chrome is developed? Chrome is developed at Google itself. Google is the owner of Chrome. So Google has created an API which is called as Chrome driver. And they have provided this API to WebDriver so that WebDriver can send the request to Chrome driver, and Chrome driver will further execute that request on the Chrome browser. And this is the same thing with IE. In case you want to execute stuff on Internet Explorer driver, so Microsoft has created something called as Internet IE driver server.exe file. They provide you this file. They provide WebDriver this file. So you need to get this file, and then when you create an object of Internet Explorer class and runs it, the communication will be sent to this, and then this exe is responsible for executing stuff on the IE browser. So WebDriver is not directly communicating with IE. WebDriver as a client, this is the client. So client is sending the request to this executable file, and this executable file is further executing the stuff on IE browser or the Chrome browser or the Safari browser or any browser that you want to work, except the Firefox. So in 2.0, Firefox native support was there. But for other browsers, you need to download this exe, which is provided by the browser vendor itself, not by WebDriver, not by Selenium. So browser vendor provides these browser executable file. These are the APIs which helps WebDriver building up a communication with your browser. And this thing possible due to this JSON wire protocol. So what is JSON wire protocol? In order to understand this JSON wire protocol, you must be little bit familiar with the API part, API as in the web services. So in case, I know many of you are from manual testing background as well. So you must have done manual testing on APIs as well. So have anyone performed testing using Postman? Any one of you have used Postman? Okay, I can see a lot of yes. Great. So what generally we do in Postman? We test APIs, right? We manually test APIs. For automation, we use Rest Assured and other libraries which are available for automating these APIs. But in case you want to manually test APIs, you use Postman majorly. You use Postman, you use Swagger. There are n number of tools available. Even SOAP UI, but SOAP UI is a licensed tool. So majorly, an open source tool, if you talk about, Postman is majorly used to send the request using some of the HTTP methods, which are called as get, put, post, delete, right? I hope most of you are familiar with these terms. If you're not familiar, don't worry about it. This is a backend architecture, right? So whatever that we are discussing right now, once you start doing API testing as well, because we have a course for API testing as well. So after UI automation, you can try going for the API testing. Then these API things will be very much clear to you. But this was written in the architecture of Selenium 2.0. If you search JSON wire protocol, if you just go to Google and search for JSON wire protocol, you will see that this is by Selenium itself. And if you go down, you will see these HTTP methods over here. Let me go down over here. See, these were the methods. Like in case I'm not using the Selenium coding part, I can even launch Postman and I can send these URIs in the request, in the get request, post request, and this will help me in launching a browser, navigating to a website, performing click. I can do all these operations using the direct API as well. Instead of using the coding part, instead of using Eclipse, I can hit these URIs with these post get methods using Postman as well. So you can see if you want to navigate to a new URL, this is a post request, right? So this is what is happening at the backend of your Selenium 2.0. Not just Selenium 2.0, even Selenium 3.0 is following the same architecture. The only difference in Selenium 2.0 and 3.0 is in 2.0, there was a native Firefox support, but in 3.0, what they have implemented is something called as W3C. W3C is World Wide Web Consortium. There are some guidelines which every project, if it is used in CMM level organization, if it is used with like where all the documentation and everything is required, because Selenium is not just used by small scale companies. These are used by big organizations as well. These days, mostly every company in automation knows Selenium, or they are using in some of their project. So if they are investing in such open source tool, there must be proper guidelines, proper documentation. There should not be any security loophole. So that is the reason in 3.0, they have implemented W3C and they have removed the native support of Firefox. So like we do for Chrome, we need to download Chrome driver exe. For Firefox as well, in case you want to work on Firefox, Mozilla provides you something called as Gecko driver, geckodriver.exe file. So you need to download this file and then you can build up a communication with Firefox. So what happens is, if you take a look at this diagram, so this is your language binding, language like we are using Java. So what happens is, when we execute the code from here, the request is sent via JSON wire protocol. So first, this is processed via JSON wire protocol. JSON wire protocol is your API, the web services. It sends the request to the browser executable. So if we have called Chrome driver class, it will send the request to this Chrome driver exe, and further Chrome driver exe will execute the stuff on the Chrome browser. If the request is for Firefox, it will be sent to Firefox driver, that is Gecko driver exe, and then it will communicate it further to the Firefox browser. This is what it was written in Selenium 2 as well as in Selenium 3. Just the difference is, in Selenium 2, there was no Firefox driver, Gecko driver required, but for other browsers, the drivers were required. But in Selenium 3, this is W3C compliance. So for all browser executable, you need these APIs, and these APIs are provided by your browser vendors, not by Selenium. So you need to go to each of their browser vendor website, you need to download this, and then only you can run the code. So if you remember in yesterday class, what we did, when we started, we have added this class, and then I have added something called as Chrome driver exe. If I don't add this, then what happens is, if I delete this, okay, there's a session that is still active. If I go to task manager, and if I remove Let's see, where is Chrome driver? Chrome driver session. It is not showing. Oh yeah, this is over here. So if I end this, and if I delete this Chrome driver exe, and let's say this is my Java client, right? This is the client. I mean, this code is called as Java client. If I run this will not be able to communicate with my browser. If I just run this, immediately it is going to throw error. And if you read the error, it will tell that the path to the driver executable is missing, right? Must be set by WebDriver, Chrome driver. So this is what we need to download it. And where we download it from, we can directly go to the Chrome browser website, or else it is available in Selenium website. The path is available in Selenium website as well. So if you go to download, and if you go down, you will see platform supported by Selenium browsers, and see all these browsers are there. So Chrome driver is supported by Chromium project. Go to the documentation part, see all versions available over here, and you need to download not the beta one, the stable version. And the version that you are downloading, you need to make sure your Chrome browser is of the same version as well. So if you see about Google Chrome, you'll find similar version 103.560, and this is the version that you see over here as well. So you need to click on this, and depending on your Windows, Mac, Linux, you need to download this file. So start downloading it, open it. This is the file, extract it. So extract here, and then you're gonna see this file, Chrome, I downloaded Chrome window _ 8. This was 8, I guess. There are so many files. Let me again extract it. I'll just copy it, go to desktop, paste it, and extract it here. And see, we got the same file. So we just need to copy this, and there are a couple of ways to use it. I'm telling you the simplest way. Just paste it here in the root of the project. And now when you run the code, you're not going to see that error, because the request will be sent to this driver, and this is now communicating with your browser. So this API is provided by Google Chrome itself. So see where we downloaded it from. We downloaded it from the Chrome driver website, the Chromium website. This is not Selenium website, right? Selenium has just given you the link from where you can download. Same way, if you want to work on Firefox, you go over here. This is Gecko driver implemented, supported by Mozilla. Click on this documentation. It will take you to the Mozilla website, right? And go to Gecko driver release. If both versions are not same, 90% of the time, the browser might not launch, or maybe it launches and immediately it is going to close, and further actions will not be performed. So you need to make sure the versions are same in case of Chrome specifically. For Firefox, Gecko driver, you will see the version as 0.31. So this is not with your browser version. So this was launched in 11th April 2022, and it supports latest Firefox as well. Do we need to okay, so we have to keep checking the versions. If you do it manually, then yes, there are some automated process as well available, something called as a WebDriver manager library. So we're going to talk about that thing as well. Let's see if we get some time today. So I'm going to show you how we can get these things automatically. So we need not to worry about downloading of this executable file. If we talk about Selenium versions as well, right now, if you have seen what is the Selenium version that I'm using, I'm using Selenium 4.3.0. Prior to this, the version was 4.2. Prior to this, the version was 4.1. Prior to this, the version was alpha 1, alpha 2. So Selenium versions also keep on changing every now and then. So it means whenever there's the latest version comes in the market, I need to remove the old version and need to add the latest one. but we need not to worry about this as well, because I'll tell you how to automatically get all these things downloaded. So Sumit is asking, earlier we used to set property and set the path of driver. Don't we have to do it in 4? Yes, we have to do the same thing in 4 as well. But I just mentioned the easiest way is to copy it in your root, and you need not to give system.set property. Otherwise, the error was saying the same thing, that you need to add this using system.set property only. Right? So we can do that thing as well. We're going to see that thing as well. Right. Okay, so now if I add this, have we downloaded that Gecko one? Let's see. We have not downloaded it. Let me download this Gecko driver as well. See, for Linux, for Windows, 32-bit, 64-bit. I'll be downloading 64-bit. So let it download. Let me open this. And I'll move it to desktop and then extract it. And then I'll just copy this and paste it here. See, this is Gecko driver exe provided by Mozilla. And now if I change this from Chrome driver to Firefox driver and run this. So this time you'll see a Firefox browser will launch and the navigation will take place in Firefox, right? So our Selenium is able to communicate with the Firefox browser using this gecko driver.exe, which is provided by Mozilla itself. And same thing goes for Edge, for IE, for Safari, for all other browsers. You need to get these executables downloaded. Yeah.
Rahul, from where we have downloaded this Chrome driver and Gecko driver?
I'll again show it to you. Just go to selenium.dev. Go to downloads and then go a little down over here and you'll see browsers.
Yeah, browsers.
From here, for Firefox, you need to click on this.
Okay,
for Chrome, you need to click on this, right? From here, go here and download it from here. This one. Windows, we have 32-bit only. This will work for 64-bit as well. Right? So that is what the architecture of Selenium 2 and Selenium 3. In Selenium 3 as well, I mean, same JSON wire protocol was there, but they have removed RC in Selenium 3. So only ID, WebDriver, and Grid. And this was launched on 13th October 2016, and the release went up till 3.141.59. So this was the last release of Selenium 3. And then we have Selenium 4 came into the market. So latest Selenium 4 that we will be working on. So we are not going to work on Selenium 3 or any previous version. We'll be using the very latest version of Selenium itself. That is Selenium 4.3. So this Selenium 4, there was a change in architecture in Selenium 4 as well. JSON wire protocol is completely removed. So Selenium 4.0, which is fully W3C compliance, Selenium 4 officially launched on 13th October 2021, which is last year itself, right? And it comes with tons of new features, improved Selenium grid architecture. Now, what grid is? Before we jump onto the architecture of Selenium 4, let us understand what grid is. We have already seen IDE, record and play. RC was initial coding library. WebDriver is the latest coding library. What is grid? Can anyone tell me what is grid?
Used for parallel execution.
Parallel test execution. So is Selenium grid for parallel test execution?
Distributed execution.
Is grid performs parallel test execution? Smita is saying no. How about others? Is grid used for parallel test execution?
Distributed execution.
Distributed execution. Then which component performs parallel test execution?
Test engine.
Test engine. Yeah.
Exactly. Right? We do parallel testing as well on grid, but for that we need a component called as test engine. So parallel test execution, you can see parallel test. So parallel test or sequential test, you can run it with the help of a framework called as test engine. Grid will actually gonna distribute that test on remote machines. Remote machines as in, so grid, we have an architecture, something like a hub, and we have nodes which are connected to the hub, something like this. So hub is a main machine where all your test cases are there, or you can keep the test cases somewhere else on a different machine as well. But you have to make one machine as a hub. So this is your hub machine, and these are nodes. Node 1, node 2, node 3. So normally we automate our BCT testing using grid. So what is BCT? BCT stands for browser compatibility testing. So let's say like if I have written somewhere around 500 test cases. Now I want those test cases to be executed on Firefox, and I want to make sure it is working fine on Chrome and Safari and on all major browsers, and even on Mac, on Windows, on Linux, all major operating system as well, because client wants that his product should be working fine on all major operating system and all major browser, because the end user could use any operating system, any browser, right? My website should work fine on all these. So for that, we do browser compatibility testing. If we do it manually, then I'll be executing 500 test cases first on, let's say, Chrome. And the other testers, I can assign other testers. Someone will be working on Firefox, someone will be working on Edge, someone will be working on Linux, someone like Windows, and all of us will be executing same number of test cases and same test cases on multiple machines and multiple browsers if we do it manually, right? So you can see it is a very time consuming task. We are doing the same task, we are repeating the same task on multiple operating system and multiple browsers. So grid basically automates the entire thing. So we have 100 test cases, 500 test cases. We have automated all those test cases. Now we'll be sending those test cases to the hub. Hub is going to be the main machine, a mode of communication. Hub
So-
will, yeah.
Rahul, hub is like a Jenkins server, or is it Jenkins?
Hub is your, not a Jenkins server. Hub is your Selenium dependency itself, the Selenium jar file. So this jar file that I downloaded, when I started this, I can start it as a hub, I can start it as a standalone. Let me show you how we're going to start it. So I'll show you what hub is as well. So let's say this is the jar file, and I'll go to CMD and I'll say java-jar this, and for the timing, I'll just say standalone and I'll press enter. So I'm starting the hub on one machine. Now I can connect other machines to this particular hub on the same intranet. If they're on same intranet, I can connect those machines to this machine. Right now, the process I've used, I'm starting hub and node on the same machine. So if I go to this particular URL, if I say localhost 444, which is the IP of this machine, you'll see this is Selenium grid. And on this grid, I have 12 Firefox session that can be supported and 12 Chrome session that can be supported. So right now, node and hub both are on the same machine, but you can configure this thing on multiple machines as well. So on one machine, you can create node 1. This could be a Windows machine having, let's say, Edge browser. This could be a Linux machine having Firefox browser. This could be a Mac machine having Chrome browser. And when you run your test from here, the test will be distributed to these machines. So you can do it in this way. Let's say you have 1000 test cases. You can execute, let's say 300 tests over here. You can execute 300 tests over here, and remaining 400 you can execute it over here. Or you can have all 1000 tests executed here, all 1000 here, all 1000 here in a parallel mode. So this thing can be done with the help of Grid. Now, whether the test will be executed parallel or sequential, this will be decided by your test ng framework. Right? So right now, when we are running this test, when I'm running this code, I have performed couple of actions, that navigation, then I'm getting the title of the page. Then I'll just gonna write one more line of code. Don't worry what I'm writing right now. We'll be studying all these things. I'm gonna do something like this, and then I'll say dot send keys, and I'm gonna say hello Selenium. So what this is going to do, if I run this, this is going to do the navigation and get the title of the page, and will type hello Selenium in the search box. Right? So a couple of actions I have performed, but how many test cases that were executed and how many of them are pass, how many of them are fail? Is anything written over here? Do you see anything that it shows I've executed 4 test cases, out of that 4 are pass and 0 fail, or 3 pass, 1 failed? It's not written over here, right? Because Selenium task is not to convert your code to test cases. Selenium is not responsible for reporting how many are pass, how many are fail. Even if you have 500 test cases, you execute it like this way, it is not going to tell you out of 500, 400 pass, 100 fail. But this is what you want from Selenium, right? You want from automation, because manually you are doing the same thing. If expected equal to actual, test case pass, otherwise it is fail. And at the end, you need to report that you have executed 500 test cases. You have manually tested 500 test cases, and out of them 400 pass and 100 fail. And if they are failed, what was the reason of the failure? Same thing we needed from automation. But Selenium is not going to do that. So which will help you in converting these things into test cases? Your testng framework. So testng is the one which will do parallel sequential testing as well, and will convert your code to test cases. And what testng is? Testng is also a jar file. Like we added this jar file yesterday, same way you will be getting the jar file of testng, and you need to add it like this. And see what testng is. Testng is also a jar file. So testng is also an API. So now we have integrated Selenium as well as testng in one project. So now I can convert this code to test cases. The other thing I want, I'm entering this test data. I don't want to hard code my test data here. I want to read it from Excel file. So Selenium will not help in doing reading and writing with Excel. There is another API, another Java project, which is developed by Apache. So you need to go to their website and you need to search for that project, which is called as POI API. So Java API for Microsoft format files. You can read, write in MS Word, PowerPoint, Excel, multiple Microsoft projects programmatically. For that, you will be needing this POI jar file. So you downloaded this. Now how to add it to your Eclipse? You just right click over here, say go to build path, add, not add library, it's external library, build path, add external library, and we go to download, we add this, we open it. So this is added. Now I can call the classes which is inside this jar file. See what is there inside Selenium jar? We have this Firefox driver class, Chrome driver class. Same way in POI, we'll be having classes of Excel. which is already implemented, which is already built. We are not building it, right? When we want to automate things on Chrome, we are not developing Selenium. Selenium is already developed. Developers have already created the entire classes, entire methods. We just need to know which class to call. So we called Firefox driver class. We called a method and we are automating a website. Same thing is with POI API. Now you want to do Excel reading and writing. You'll be calling classes from this jar file and you'll be calling methods and you'll be communicating with your Excel, doing reading and writing from your Excel and providing the value over here. Same thing is with test-ng. I'll convert this code into test cases with the help of these jar files. Now I want to do some database validation. I want to fire some queries to SQL Server, MySQL, MongoDB. So all these vendors, they provide their own APIs. If you want to do something with MySQL, just search MySQL over here and you get MySQL connector Java. Just download this. This is available in a form of a 2.4 MB jar file. Now you go to your Eclipse, right click, go to build path, add library and add this jar file. That's it. Now you can connect your this code to database and maybe your test data in database, not in Excel. So you can read the test data from database, username and password, and then you can provide it to your website. So Selenium is not doing it. This jar file is doing it. Selenium is just 25% in your automation. The components that we have listed over here, IDE, WebDriver, Grid, these are just 25% in your entire automation. Rest 75% is what we discussed over here. In case you want to do database connection, JDBC, you'll be using their APIs. In case you want to use Excel reading and writing, you'll be using POI API. You want to generate logs, you'll be using Log4j. You want to use you convert your code to test cases, you will be using test-ng, JUnit. These are all jar files. These are all APIs. Selenium is only used to access the elements on the web page. That's it. Right?
So Rahul, using test-ng framework, like do this framework decides that test cases will happen sequential or in parallel process, or we will
Absolutely.
decide?
No, in framework, we need to configure it in such a way.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Right? Same way, I want to, I have written Firefox driver over here. If I write Android driver, this code will start running on my real mobile device. But this Android driver is not available here. See, if I just copy paste this, I'm not getting this Android driver. Why? Because this is not inside Selenium. This is where? This is inside APM. APM Java client, basically. If you write Java client, the jar file name is Java client. See, Java client for mobile web driver, APM mobile web driver. So APM is nothing. It's a wrapper over your web driver API. So you need to download this jar file. See this Java client. This is by APM. If I right click and add this, go to build path, add external archive, and add this Java client, you will see that this Android driver, the error is gone from here. Why the error is here? This is because of the constructor. We need to provide some arguments here, right? You can see add argument to match this constructor. So what this constructor is, we're going to talk about it later on, right? This is not from Selenium part. This is from the APM part. But you can see same code. If you run it, if you have connected your real device, if you run this, a browser will launch on your real device and will navigate to Google. You can test WhatsApp, Facebook, any internal application. You can make a phone call on Android, on iOS. You can do testing on the real devices using this Android driver and iOS driver class. And you can integrate with your Selenium project itself. So you can see, you can automate mobile part, you can automate database, you can automate web part, you can even automate web services. web services like REST APIs. For that, what you need to do, just type rest assured here, and you'll be getting the rest assured jar file. Use this jar file and automate REST APIs, not manually testing, automating the REST APIs. See, rest assured jar. So if you know Selenium, down the line, you can work on these things as well. The process remains the same. Selenium is a jar file, rest assured is a jar file. Jar file is a collection of classes, methods. You just need to call those classes, methods, and automate the website. Just your base should be core Java, right? If your core Java base is strong, then you can add any of these jar files. If I am a Java developer, I even need not to learn Selenium. I know Java, and for me, this is just a jar file. And in jar file, I'll just gonna go through the API document. I'll see what all classes are there, and I start calling the classes and methods, and I can automate the functionality easily. But if we are coming from the testing background, we have never worked on programming part. So this is something like how we will be starting. We'll be starting with Selenium first. We'll be getting ourselves comfortable with the UI automation part, and then we can integrate all these things in one single project as well. Because there are times when there are, let's say, e-commerce application, which have their, like if I talk about Amazon have their mobile applications as well. They have their UI website as well. They have their web services as well. So at times the frameworks are designed in which you can automate all these three layers, even the database layer as well, right? You need not to create different, you need not to invest in different tools for it. For UI automation, you are using a separate tool. For database, you are using separate tool. For mobile automation, you are using separate tool. You need not to invest in different tools. But yes, if you use QTP, UFT, RFT, then you may need to invest in different tools. You need to pay license to different tools. And this is what makes Selenium the best, that this is not a tool, it's just a library. Using basic core Java, you can add all these libraries and you can automate all these things that we discussed yesterday. Web-based, desktop-based, mobile, API, database. For all these, there are open source jars available. Just integrate all these in one project and access the functionality and automate all these components easily. So that is the reason why companies are using Selenium, because it's very robust. You can integrate anything that is feasible in Java with Selenium. So you are not limited to just one tool. There is no boundary. That is what the major advantage of using Selenium is. Could you please show how to use test data from database for testing? We will be learning about that thing. For that, we need to first study the JDBC connection. So we have a topic for that as well in Selenium. Once we reach to that point, I'll be showing you that. So let me show you the course content first. So we haven't discussed about the Selenium syllabus. So this is what we'll be covering. We'll be covering latest Selenium 4.0 itself. And we'll be starting with, first we have seen today that how to add jar files manually, but we're going to do this with an automated process as well. For that, we'll be using some dependency management tool, some build tool, which is called as Maven. So yesterday I listed that we'll be studying Maven as well. So this is where Maven, Gradle is an enhanced version of Maven, but majorly companies are using Maven. So Maven is a build tool, or you can call it as a dependency management tool, right? So student will be continuing with Selenium. From the next session, we'll be configuring Maven first, and all the projects will be following Maven. And for other students, will be starting with Java. As soon as your Java ends, you'll be starting with the Selenium part, right? But till that time, you're going to have access to all the video recordings during the weekdays. In case you want to practice something around Selenium as well, you can start going through these sessions as well. right? So all these things like reporting, report ng, allure, extend report, these are nothing. These are jar files. It's not a task of Selenium to create a report. So once your test cases are executed, your client want to see like how many test cases are passed, how many are failed. How will you gonna present it to client? You'll be showing some interactive reports. Reports will gonna look something like this. If I show you the reporting part, I'll show you some reports. So report looks something like this. So which will tell what all execution happened, how many test cases executed, what was the test data enter, which element you were entering. So each and every log is maintained, right? If any test case fails, you will see a screenshot of that failure as well. And here you're going to come to know how many test cases, how many failed, how many passed. Nothing failed, so nothing showing in graph. But let's see if I have any failure one as well, not over here. So everything passed. Let me show you the another one where we have failures as well. Again, everything passed. Let's see. Okay, no failed test case. So this is how graphical report works. But we're going to see how to fail a test case, how to attach a screenshot as well. Whenever there's a failure, a screenshot is automatically attached.
Do we capture logs as well while?
Yes, we'll capture logs as well. So in case for logging, log4j will be used. Logs will be captured like this. See, these are the logs with the current timestamp. So at this time, test suite started, all these loaded, database connection established, right? And navigated to this website, clicking on an element, first name, last name, entered all the values. All these things we'll be learning how to generate logs. This will be done using log4j. So Selenium is not responsible for generating any log.
Rahul, log4j, there is a problem in log4j.
There was some security issue, but that is only when you are developing something and integrating log4j in that. So there was some vulnerability issue that came, but that issue is fixed now. I mean, even if you look at different jar files, different dependency, you will find vulnerability around around rest assured as well. Vulnerability from dependency. Same thing is there with your log4j as well.
Okay. So still it will work.
Yeah, it will work. Don't worry about it.
It is working in the industry, log4j as of now.
Yeah,
only.
absolutely.
Okay.
So this
Thank
is
you.
just for the product to know that this library could be vulnerable, right? If you're using it. So what vulnerability they've mentioned it over here. So we need not to worry about it. We are using it for the automation purpose. So don't worry about it. Right? So let's go back to the content. Then these detailed topics of core Java will be covered. So all Excel reading, writing, file handling, exception handling, the complete OOPS concept, the basic building, if else, loops, data types, everything will be covered. And then we'll be using latest features of Selenium 4, which was not there in Selenium 3, something called as the relative locators, some CDP features, which are Chrome Dev Tool Protocol. So we're going to discuss about that once we move to our Selenium topics. So all these topics from basics till advanced level will be working on Selenium. We'll be learning all the strategies of XPath, CSS, auto-generating them, handling complex elements using XPath, designing our own XPath, CSS, so that we can handle any feasible element on the web. If we are able to handle all the elements, we can automate any website easily. So these are the CDP features, and then some TestNG framework, customizing report, extend report, JDBC, POI, log4j, automated emails, properties, grid 4, Docker. What Docker is, it is little difficult to explain it right now because I need to explain the complete architecture. But try searching on Google what Docker is. Dockers are very widely used these days. Docker, Jenkins, Maven, and will be executing our test on AWS as well. And these are the 2 live projects that we discussed. We'll be designing it from scratch. Right, so this is the complete content, which is going to take at least 3.5 months to complete the Java training as well as the Selenium training. And once you're done with this, you practice thoroughly for 3.5 months, you'll be very much confident in the UI automation part. And then you can start with the API testing. Because down the line, if you talk about current industry, where the competition has grown so much, there was a time like, when I started my career, like there was a time when if you know something on what is a test case, what is test plan, if you know definition as well, you can easily crack the manual testing interview. But then the time came where so many automation tool came into the picture. And if you know basics of Selenium, you can crack the interview. But now the time is not like that. Now the time is every third person knows Selenium. So you can assume the competition has grown so much. And these days, applications are designed where we have an API layer, where we have a UI layer, where we have a mobile layer. So combination of UI plus API is a big demand in the industry, because both can be handled in same framework. I'm not talking about mobile layer right now, because if you know Selenium, APM is the same stuff. The way we work in Selenium, same thing we'll be using in APM as well. So if you know UI automation, mobile automation is just like a 1-week task. But I would recommend first learn these 2 things, UI plus API. And once you're comfortable with both the things, you should be able to crack interviews easily. Because these are the things that you'll be stuffing in your resume. If you are planning to justify 2-3 years of your experience after this training, you have to stuff all these things in your project. If you have handled manual testing project, if you have manually testing any website, if you have manually done testing of any website and you have mentioned that in your resume, then you can stuff all these things in those manual projects and tell them that, yes, you have worked on automation on these. They're not going to come to your company to see whether you have worked on automation or not, just that your knowledge is going to talk at that point of time. So we'll be going through all the interview questions, tips. So by the end, if you are comfortable with these things, you should be able to crack interviews easily.
So Rahul, if I go with the UI automation course, like if I learn it very quickly, and so can I go for the interview just knowing the UI part only? Okay.
Yes, but I would recommend basic knowledge of API is also required. But still, you can start with the interview. At least for the Selenium interviews, you can start for it.
Okay.
Rahul, I have 11 plus years of experience. So can I show fake of 5 years after doing this course?
The fake of five years is a good amount of experience to justify. Just with UI automation, it will be little difficult to handle.
So plus API also I need to do.
Plus API at least, yeah. UI, API, these things should be very much on your tips.
Okay.
Right.
Rahul, I have some issues with jars as well as deleting the external jars. At the end of the course, I would like to share my screen and I want your help on that.
That's fine, sure. So at the end of the session, you can stay for 5 minutes and then I'll look at it. Okay, Ashish is asking, are we going to start with Selenium or Java? See, the people who have like recently joined or are about to enroll will be starting with the Java part from next week. And people who are already done with the core Java sessions, you'll be continuing in the same batch and you'll be starting with Selenium. For the Java people, we'll be forming up a new WhatsApp group and I'll be sharing you the meeting invites in the WhatsApp group. For people who have completed Selenium, your group is going to be the same. I have changed the description of group to the Selenium. You guys have already seen that, right? So, but the meeting invites will be new. So I'll be sharing new meeting invites for Selenium as well as for Java.
Rahul, Is it possible to continue both or session parallelly?
Both session
Java.
might not be possible parallel because both are running at the same time, 8 to 10 in the evening. So
Okay.
in any case, I mean, if you, because see, Java itself is going to take 1.5 to 2 hours and Selenium again 2 hours. So it will be difficult to digest and the topics might not be relevant. So it may happen that you are learning basic if else loops in Java, and here you are automating some stuff by reading Excel, and the Excel reading topic is not yet covered in Java if you do it parallel. So that is the reason.
So I'm asking because I have core knowledge about the Java, but I need to brush up my knowledge and some additional.
So
knowledge
in that
to it.
case, you can do one thing, like you can start with Selenium sessions if you know basics of Java, because in the first 3-4 sessions, a very basic part of Java in Selenium will be covered. So till that time, we are going to record both Selenium and Java sessions. Java, you can go through the recordings during the weekdays, and during the weekends, you can attend live session of Selenium if you are little comfortable in Java.
Okay, thank you.
Rahul, how much usage of collection in Selenium?
The very first class itself, I mean, not the first one, the next one that we are going to use starts from collection itself, the list, error list, and all those things. Yeah.
Hi Rahul. This is like my first lecture today. So
Uh-huh.
there was one other lecture yesterday also, right?
Yeah, I sent you, I guess, I sent you the recording of
Yeah.
that lecture, right?
So
These two lectures are not dependent on what we are starting from the next class, in case you are starting from beginning from Java. So don't worry about it. These two lectures will be again repeated once you are done with the Java sessions.
okay, so no, when I saw your screen today, I saw there was some you already made some classes in the program and all that. So like it was an introductory session today,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, it is just a yesterday, like in order to make guys understand what exactly Selenium is. So I just took an example of how to create a calculator and how to access these methods. What exactly is an API? This is what we discussed in yesterday's session. So if you go through the recording of yesterday's session, you'll be able to cover it up easily.
Okay, and from next weekend,
we'll be starting ABC of Java. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And is there any Selenium session going parallelly with this?
This is the one. I'll be continuing with the Selenium part. Java instructor will be taking your Java sessions, but both sessions will happen at the same time.
At the same time. So from next weekend, like there will be another Java instructor which will be covering Java first.
Yeah, we'll be taking just the Java part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rahul, if it is same time, it will be difficult for Java and Selenium. Is it possible one after another?
Actually, these are the global timings. There are many students who are live from US as well, US, UK. So this is like a global time. So that's the reason we keep Selenium Java session 8 to 10 only. Yeah, but in any case, I really don't recommend to attend both in parallel. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to digest it.
Okay.
Hello,
right?
Rahul.
So if you guys are not in a hurry, I would recommend that go in a sequence. First, learn Java, get yourself comfortable in Java, because when you are going out for interview, for Selenium automation interview, 90% of the time you'll find that there are no questions being asked from Selenium. They're not going to ask you how to launch a browser and how to do navigation. These are the very simple topics. They are majorly going to check your core Java programming knowledge, because if you are good in Java, you can work on any API, you can integrate any API. And then they're going to check your knowledge on the framework designing part. Right? So Selenium, you'll face very little questions. If you start facing questions for Selenium, you can easily assume that the interviewer who is taking the interview, what sort of knowledge that he have, you should be able to crack that interview very easily.
Rahul, with the knowledge of core Java, is it possible to continue the SDET position in a company, or is it more advanced knowledge?
Yes, for SDET, core Java knowledge is must, but yes, you should be comfortable with some UI, some API related stuff as well.
Do we
I'm
have
asking you, do you need the advanced knowledge about Java?
Advanced Java is not required. We are not developing anything, right? So you need not to do advanced frameworks like Hibernate and other frameworks, right? But yes, the core Java that we are covering, you can go a little advanced in that core Java as well, because there is no limit in learning in core Java as well. So you can study some algorithms, some data structures, these are the things that you can add it. For an SDAT profile, you should be familiar with these things as well.
Hello, Rahul. With respect to the two live projects, in which, what kind of domain will be of that two live projects?
So there are practice websites where there is a CRM application, there's a banking application, a dummy banking application that we'll be testing. We'll be picking up a live website there's a website called as carwale.com. So we're gonna hit that website. We're gonna search for cars, and we're gonna create some test cases around that. So we'll be taking all practical websites itself.
Okay, thank you.
Hi Rahul.
Yeah.
I have experience of around 13 years in manual testing as well as handling small teams. So how much expertise is required to go for QA manager interview?
See,
Because
if you are giving the interview for a manager, then even for a manager, your knowledge of automation should be good, because in case you're handling team of automation and you don't know automation, then people can give any sort of excuse that why this thing is not working or why this is taking long time, and you'll not be able to justify it. So for that reason as well, the automation knowledge is must. But in case of QA manager interview, they may not expect you to write code, but they may expect you to explain some real-time challenges that you may have faced in automation or handling automation team. So these are some of the things. If you know automation, if you know Selenium, you may not be involved very much in the coding part or automating stuff, but still the knowledge, the overall knowledge you should be taking. What exactly framework, which framework to implement, what is the benefit for page objects. So these are some of the things. If you practically study it, then only you will be confident in these areas.
okay, that means practical is required in that case.
At least you should try doing all these things practically for learning purpose. But in interviews, you may not face questions like, okay, go ahead and automate this login window. So they're not going to ask you these questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rahul?
Yeah.
Rahul, small question. Do we have any SDET training going on?
SDET specific training is not there, but SDET is like the combination of all these things. So combination of your API, combinations of, we conducted one training on Spring Boot. So Spring Boot is something that you should be familiar with. So Spring Boot, you can look at the API part, you can look at the UI part. So these are the things that we discussed, is something which is a combination which makes you an SDET.
Okay. So along with Java and any other BDD framework,
Yeah.
and with those, we have to have that Docker and
Yes,
other.
so that is the reason we are conducting sessions on DevOps, which is specifically designed for automation engineers itself. So you should be familiar with like this GitHub, how to do like branching and all those stuff. So these things are also important. And we are covering Dockers in depth in the DevOps session. We are covering Jenkins, CI/CD, pipeline. So all these things you should be familiar with. So that is the reason I mentioned that these days, even if you're applying as an automation engineer, the competition has grown a little high, that the expectations are more. You should be comfortable with some DevOps tools. You should be comfortable with UI automation, with API automation, with different languages as well, not just Java. Down the line, you should be learning Python as well, right? Because you should be open to everything. I mean, it may happen that your company is hiring you as an automation engineer, and you're good in Selenium, they may gonna give you a task for Python. So you should be flexible enough to move between Java and Python and API and UI. This is what the flexibility you should be getting. Yes, JavaScript, again, it is getting popular these days. Your frameworks like Cypress, like Playwright, the automation tools which are coming are supporting JavaScript. So we are also running a batch of Cypress as well, using TypeScript, JavaScript. So, but yes, everything cannot be learned in the beginning. So that is the reason. Start with Selenium at least. At least Selenium will gonna help you in building up your base for automation. Once this base is built up, down the line, 1 year, 2 year, you'll be practically using all these automation tools. You'll be confident enough, you can easily pick up a tool, you can study it, and then you can start implementing it.
Rahul, I actually, studied Selenium 3 years back. I joined
Okay.
as a software automation engineer,
Mhm.
and in the company in MNC, they are giving me, manual work only. Apart from that, the automation, I'm not able to learn anything. They have developed everything, and it's a very
Uh-huh.
weird sort of automation that I'm getting from last 3 years. Reason
Yeah.
being, this happens not only with me, with all my friends. So in that
It
case, I'm not
happens.
able to grow. Yeah.
It happens when you, in the interview, you mention that I'm comfortable with manual as well as in automation. So if you are open to both manual and automation, 70% of the chances you'll end up in the manual process itself. And even if we talk about automation, most of the time you're not joining a pilot batch where like the framework is already developed by some external team. They've outsourced the framework designing, and now they have completed the framework. They have given you some Excel sheet, and they're asking you to fill this Excel sheet and automate the stuff like a keyword driven part. So most of the time you're not exposed to the exact coding part, and you are not able to utilize the skills that you have learned in your programming or in the automation training. So this happens. I mean, you need to be very much focused. You need to tell that I am from an automation background completely, and I would like to work on automation projects only. Don't consider me for the manual testing role. So if you are that much confident, and this you'll not be doing like you are resigning from a job and then you are searching for an automation job. There's no one should do, right? So if you are in a job, then switching a job is easy, but if you resign and then you are searching for a job, then it might be little risky. So you'll be that much confident in the interview when you have a job with you, then tell them that I only want to do automation, I don't want to do manual. So then you'll be getting the automation project itself.
At the time of interview, they asked me everything, starting from programming Java, but
Yeah,
then
interviews is like this only.
It happens. Yeah.
Rahul, just one question I want to ask. Tentatively, what ratio of questions I can expect during interviews, like amongst Java and Selenium?
See, majorly questions will be from Java itself. You can say 50 to 60% interview is from your programming part itself, and then from the framework designing. Selenium you may face, but very little questions.
Okay, so like if suppose I have not started my sessions of framework designing, and before that itself, if I'm trying to attend any interviews.
No, don't do that.
Okay.
Because like you may gonna get stuck when they ask you about the live project.
Like as per your recommendation, I should go for framework designing after.
Yeah,
this.
first let us understand what the framework is, but let us see what the architecture is. Then only you will be able to explain your project using that architecture.
Hi Rahul, Soumya.
Yeah, hi Soumya.
Yeah, so my question is that how easy it is to automate a feature within the same sprint, considering the instability in the.
See, for automation, a feature has to be stable.
Mhm.
Because if things are changing, then if you are have already written a script for it, and if it is changing again and again, you're not going to change the script again and again.
Mhm.
Right, and for these purpose itself, the frameworks are designed like page objects, so that with a very minimum change, in your test case. You can just update your business specification. If there is any change in the business specification, you can go ahead in that functionality and do the update, and your test cases will never be changed. We're going to follow the same business specification, because we are working in an agile environment, and in agile requirements keeps on changing every now and then. So our framework must be that much robust to handle all these requirements, all these challenges.
Okay, thank you.
Hey Rahul, I have small question about Selenium Grid. When we are configuring a hub and node, do we have to do anything in Jenkins side in order to go for a distributed execution of it?
Jenkins is for scheduling your job. So normally when we are automating a test, when we are executing a test suite, we are not going to do it manually. Like right now, what we are doing, we are running things from Eclipse, right? But there we may gonna have some automated triggers like you are writing a code, or maybe development is doing some changes and they are checking their code. So checking means after doing the code, they're checking the code to a centralized repository. That centralized repository could be Git, GitHub, could be SVN. And what configuration that we did, as soon as there is a commit happen from the development side, we have written a BVT suite. We have automated a BVT suite, like a built verification test. So automatically that test should be triggered. So Jenkins is what it is responsible for triggering that. We will be doing that configuration. Not just that, Jenkins is a multi-purpose tool. You can do CI, CD, pipeline, lot of things. You can even schedule your jobs manually. Like let's say a client is sitting somewhere else and he wants to run your automation suite and want to see the result, the reporting and everything. You'll not be giving him the code, and you'll not be installing Eclipse on his machine, right? So you're going to give him the Jenkins UI. He'll be logging to that UI. He'll be clicking on running for your job. Automation will be executed there itself. He'll going to get the report. He should be able to see how many test cases are getting passed, how many are getting failed, if the build is getting passed or failed. So all these things he'll be able to see in Jenkins.
We will be covering
is there any
our training now.
Sorry, one by one, please.
Rahul, we will be covering our CI/CD in our.
We'll be covering the Jenkins part, not complete pipeline and all those things, because pipeline and all this configuration we are already doing in the DevOps course. But we'll be configuring our job. We'll be running it through Jenkins. We'll be doing. We'll be scheduling a job that after every minute, after 1 hour, automatically the job will be triggered. These are the things. The detailed configuration we'll be doing in the Selenium session.
Okay. Rahul, I have a continuation question for the Selenium Grid, and we have a pipeline called like a Jenkins every trigger point for different environments. What I'm saying is it is going into the only Chrome browser or Edge browser as of now, as we configured. If I wanted to configure for the Selenium Grid with the different browsers and platform or versions of that, so do we have to configure anything else in Jenkins?
You need not to do that thing in Jenkins. You will be doing that thing in your code. There you'll be mentioning, which browser should be executed. That thing has to be mentioned in the code.
Okay. So is there any recording sessions for that to?
Yeah, we do have. If you want, you can check the latest. Let me show it to you. You can, just a moment, from here, I'll show you. Configuring pipeline with Jenkins, all these things, you can check it from Selenium 4 library from here.
And it's fine. I'm saying that only for Selenium Grid.
For Selenium Grid, you can take a look at this Grid 4, and just try going through this. And for
that is the latest recording, right?
Yeah, these are the latest recording. First, go through this, and then go through this particular project, which is specifically designed for Grid. So use this particular project. Let me show it to you. That is project number 6. This one. So this one will have all those things that you're talking about. So multi-threading and all these things, parallel execution, hubs, nodes, all this configuration. But this is using Selenium 3. So that is what I've said, that first go through that Selenium 4 grid part and then use the framework, because framework remain as it is, just that dependencies keep on changing. So whenever you're using this framework, you need to use the latest jar files. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Rahul. That helps.
Rahul, one more thing I wanted to ask, that in my company, instead of for anything related to fetching data from Excel sheet, instead of using Apache Pod, they do something like they fetch it using config property file.
There are many APIs available, not just this, through some database APIs as well, you can make a connection. So like there's an API called as JXL, so you can use that thing as well. But POI is very widely used. So majorly companies are using that. So that is the reason we have included POI in the training. But yes, there are alternates as well available, because this is just in Java API. So anything that is feasible in Java, that is what I said, you can integrate with Selenium.
Okay, and like what is the major difference between this Gradle and Maven? Like,
Gradle is just a wrapper over Maven. So prior to Maven, the build tool was Ant. If you have heard about ANT Ant, so that was a build tool, but it does not have much features. So now they came up with Maven. Maven is quite huge. Majorly companies are using Maven. And now there is another wrapper over Maven, which is called as Gradle. There are still some companies using Gradle, but very widely that is used as Maven.
Rahul, one last question from my side. Okay, is there any list of live scenarios that we are challenges that we are facing in Selenium? Because these are the questions that are asked mostly in the interview nowadays. What about the, so have you created the series of that one, or some notes that you have created for it?
See, that I need to look, because the complete training is practical oriented training only, because the question that you have asked must be related to the theoretical concepts. So that I need to look.
Challenges that you are facing in while developing the framework and all. These are the questions that are nowadays asked.
I may have an interview library. I can share it with you. Maybe this question is covered. Otherwise, we'll be taking this question at the time when we are designing a framework. So at the end, we're going to take these interview questions as well.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sure.
So Rahul, one question. So if is there a scenario in real time, like if a particular product or application is in development, and whether automation engineer can start parallelly automating the scripts? Is that a possible thing?
Not automating the script, but there are frameworks available where you can start writing at least the user scenarios. So you can start developing a project, you can start creating your page objects. These are the things that you can start with. And later on, once the elements are developed, are fully designed, then you can map it with. Right. Mocha Chai tool, this is with JavaScript.
You mean to say that in that case, like, should we go for more BDD framework?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There you can write the stories, user stories, and those user stories are not yet fully dependent on whether the functionality is implemented or not. That is dependent on the specifications, the requirements that you receive from the client. Based on that, you start writing the stories.
But the major challenge is like getting the timelines corrected, because most of the sprint timeline is taken up by the dev activities. So to automate it, really, like, the time becomes very a bottleneck.
Yeah, that is where your test manager should come in, and if he has a technical knowledge, he should be able to justify the timelines that you would be needing for this automation process.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Rahul, just one question from my side. So in most of the company, due to the firewall and all those things, so we can't download the dependency directly from Maven. So they are using some artifactory like JFrog artifactory. So are we covering any of that one?
No, see, that is again depending on the requirement. At times, if there are firewalls, there is something called a settings.xml file that you can place where your Maven local repository is there on your desktop. that XML file, setting XML, will gonna have your proxy information, which you'll be getting it from the IT team. If you provide that proxy information, all your dependencies will automatically gonna get downloaded.
Okay. All right. All right. Sir.
Yeah. Okay, so that's really good to see, guys. So many of you are interacting, and I hope you're not feeling it like a boring online session, right? Because that is what my main purpose is, to make it like more interactive, so that you should feel like we are sitting in a classroom and taking a session.
Thanks, Rahul.
All right. Abhishek, your question is more specific to XPath. I guess the people here are not much familiar with it, so we can take it offline. You can ping me on WhatsApp, and I'll work with you. How we're gonna handle this.
Hi, Rahul.
Yeah.
So you have mentioned like working environment like agile. So most of the companies are currently work on the agile basis, like the sprint duration, I think.
Absolutely.
So
Almost every company is following agile, Scrum, Sprint.
okay, okay. So there are models like a waterfall V model. So I think
Those
can
are
you
old
explore?
old technologies. Now no one follows them.
Okay, okay. Yeah, one more thing I want to tell you. Like yesterday, I also attended the lecture, and today, so I have attended so many lectures, but I want to express my vote of thanks to you because I have never seen a like educator like you in terms of like interaction.
Yeah,
So,
thanks a lot, Vikrant. Thank you so much.
thank you, thank you.
Sure. So thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for
Rahul,
joining in.
I need
Yeah.
5 minutes of yours. I have.
Sure. So, guys, we are done with the session. If you don't have more questions, then we can wind off. And Tariq, you can stay back, and I'll help you in your queries. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining in. I'll be sharing the recordings very soon to your email ID, and we'll meet next weekend. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Rahul sir, one question from me.
Yeah.
Just before going to the Selenium part, do I need to go for the recording of Java sessions that are previously available?
See, if you are new to the Java part, I would recommend first start with Java sessions, because we are starting with Java next weekend, and continue in the live batch itself. In case you know little bit Java, then you can follow the recordings of Java and continue with the Selenium batch. This is like if in case you want to learn Selenium very quickly. If you're not in hurry, then first go through the Java training and then go through Selenium part.
Okay, so I'm not quite new for Java. I mean, I have little knowledge of Java. So can I go for recording sessions?
Yeah, then you can refer the recordings of the previous batch, and you can continue in the same Selenium batch. If you are able to understand whatever that we did in 2 sessions, we written a little bit code over here. If you're able to understand this code, then you can continue in the Selenium class.
Okay, okay, fine. Fine.
All right.
So can you show me the link where the previously recorded sessions are available?
I'll send it to you. You can just ping me on WhatsApp. I'll send it to you.
Sure. And how to join the WhatsApp group for any of the
I'll be giving you the WhatsApp group link for this particular batch, so you can join on that for Selenium.
Sure. Thank you.
Right. You can ping me on WhatsApp. I'll send it to you.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
All right.
Rahul, are you sharing the WhatsApp group link to like on the mail or?
Yeah, I'll be sending it
one
to everyone over the email, the Java one as well as the Selenium one. So in case you are starting with Java, join that Java one. Otherwise, join the Selenium one.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, thank you guys.
Rahul, if you please allow me to share my screen.
Sure, let me make you the host. Just give me a moment.
Sure.